Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. I'm doing my ranking video for the Slumber Party Massacre films. Now, of course, apparently, and I keep talking about this in my previous reviews, I've kind of had a weird review set for this. I had two films I did spoiler reviews for, two I did not, the final two, because I kind of got away from that a little bit. I felt like I wasn't doing that properly, just because of my horrible memory and shit. I'm getting old. Excuse me for that. Anyway, Slumber Party Massacre supposedly is tied into some other franchises, like Sorority House Massacre, I believe is one of them, Cheerleader Massacre. IMDb confused the hell out of me. It says that Cheerleader Massacre 1 and 2 are direct sequels to, like, Part 3. I don't fucking care. I'm just talking about Slumber Party Massacre, to be honest with you, because the more I look at those movies, the more it seems like they might be in the same universe, but that's like watching Marvel's Eternals the other day. For the first time for me, and them saying, hey, you know what, you're like Batman, or you're like Superman. Does that mean they're in that world? I don't want them to be. I don't want them to be part of your Eternals movie. Just leave them alone. But anyway, Slumber Party Massacre is a 4-film series. If you don't include all that other bullshit that people supposedly say is a part of the series, but I'm ignoring them. I've heard those are both bad series anyway. Eventually I'll try to get around to reviewing them, but I haven't really had anybody comment saying they even know what those are, or that they want me to review them for that matter. Anyway, so 4 films in this series. I really, really loved 2 of them. And 2 of them I did not like at all, almost. Parts of one of them, but the other one, no. Hated it. I have a lot of negative things to say. I won't get into all those things here. If you're curious about my thoughts, please just go watch the reviews themselves. They're like 30 to 40 minutes a piece, sometimes longer. I'm a rambler, dude, but I like to cover a little bit of everything. Even in my spoiler-free reviews, in the last couple of reviews for Part 3 and Part 4, I kind of like to avoid the spoilers, just because people might have not seen it, but people might want to hear me go on a tangent and rant about some shit, or just tear something apart without getting into too many details. But I like to be thorough. I think it's the big thing with me. I'm a very detailed person when it comes to my work and stuff. I like to be thorough. So, here I am, doing my ranking video for the 4 of them, from worst to best, as a matter of fact. And I'm going to start off with my number 1 pick, or my number 4 pick, I guess, at the bottom of the barrel here. My number 4 pick, the worst in my opinion, is probably pretty obvious because of the thumbnails alone, and that would be Slumber Party Massacre 3. Slumber Party Massacre 3 decided to break away from Part 1 and Part 2 in a different way than Part 2 broke away from Part 1. You know, those movies have their own issues. Part 3 decided for the first time ever that it wasn't going to have a silly nature. It wasn't going to be over the top and funny. It wasn't going to have humor in there pretty much at all. It was going to be a whodunit mystery, which a lot of 80s slashers did. And to me, that's what set Slumber Party Massacre 1 from 1982 apart from everything else, like My Bloody Valentine that had come out the year before, you know, in 1981. Or Friday the 13th, or Friday the 13th Part 2. Slumber Party Massacre stood out because it wasn't a whodunit. It was like the Final Exam movie, I believe, that I haven't seen yet. That I believe in that film, the killer is not like one of the people that's in the friend group or something. It's not doing a scream. It's just somebody who's killing people. Just he's an element, a force in the background, kind of like Michael Myers, you know. He's not a character you know who's hiding. It's nothing like that. And to me, that's what made that film stand out. This whole whodunit thing could have been good. It could have been a nice change. They do go back to some things, like, for example, in Part 2, the killer had a guitar that had the drill on it. The drill is like the major weapon of this franchise for 3 out of the 4 films. Part 3 went back to having the electric drill, and I thought that was cool. That was nice, too. The mask looks like shit for the killer. He's basically, the whole costume basically sucks. He's basically wearing a hoodie with the hood up, and then the mask looks like a Slipknot mask, without any nails or anything that should be, like, beaten into it. You know, it's just like a silver gray, really ugly-ass, old mask-looking thing. It's trash. I'm sorry. It's just trash looking. It looks like it should be made out of metal, but it really looks like it's plastic, you know? Very flimsy, very dumb. The motivations for the killer in this film, and why this person is killing people, to me is bizarre. Very bizarre, very uncomfortable too. It's an uncomfortable subject. The film doesn't go into it too much, but let me explain it like this. 2 plus 2 is not equaling 4 in that situation. I don't understand why this person would do what they're doing because of what happened to this person. It's fucking weird. I don't like it. There's like a stalker guy in the film that always like follows this group of friends around somehow, some way, but he does. And he just stares at him in the most uncomfortable way. And again, I said this in my review. It wasn't like hey, what are you guys doing? I'm going to watch you from across the beach. It's kind of like that. It's just so weird. why is that even in here? I mean, I understand it's a red herring, but in Slumber Party Massacre, why? Anyway, you have the group of friends. To me, they have basically no real personality that really stood out at all. Again, there's not really any jokes or any humor, and at least part 2, as boring as the first hour of the part 2 movie was, at least they had that. But this film, for me, part 3 has nothing going for it. Even the gore and the kills suck. You really don't see a lot of them, and the ones you do see, they're dull. And pretty much all 3 films outside of this movie, the remake, part 1, part 2, they all have really good special or practical effects for the most part. Some are a lot better than others. Some are in better movies than others, but, you know, they at least have good kills. This one, not really. I don't think there was one in this entire movie that I liked, if I'm being honest with you. There's kind of one that I remember, and that's it. It's towards the end of the film. Anyway, moving along to my number 3 pick. Number 3 for me is Slumber Party Massacre 2. Yes, that probably seems like heresy. Apparently, the more I've done research this week into the fandom of Slumber Party Massacre, the reviews seem to stack up more and more that a lot of people love Part 1, but a lot of people love Part 2. Part 2 is post-Nightmare on Elm Street, and that's important for me to say because in 1987, you now had like 3 of these Nightmare on Elm Street films, and this film is mainly focused on a supernatural element. It's the only film in the entire franchise to do that. I think it was a terrible fucking mistake. You know, you couldn't bring back the killer from part 1, so they decided to bring a new villain in who is haunting the younger sister, who is the main character in this film from part 1. The one who wanted her makeup done, her hair done and stuff by her older sister who protected her. She barely made it out of part 1. She's in this one as the main character, and she's having trauma from that, having these horrible nightmares that are keeping her up. And after an hour of her and her friends on their little getaway, they're in a band, they're kind of rehearsing for a new audition or whatever, and I like their music. I like the music in general in the film, and I think it makes it pretty fun. After an hour of them fucking around and talking, bantering, calling the cops, different things like that, they eventually, after just dullness for an hour, they finally get to a situation where her and her boyfriend crush guy are going to have sex, and all of a sudden, the guy from her dreams that's like a 1950s Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley mishmash killer that has a massive guitar with a massive drill attached to the end of it on the neck of the guitar, he just materializes like Freddy fucking Krueger and starts killing people around the house. I mean, one after another, like going after him, like 5 and 6 of them die. This guy, I love his performance. Everyone else is kind of okay. You know, they try to do something with the script they're given. To me, this film has an identity crisis. It doesn't know what it wants to do. And I think the whole supernatural route was a terrible fucking idea. You literally did not have to do that. You could have done something else. Had, like, an element of just a regular old thriller. Have this guy just show up. Maybe they watched him play at a bar nearby or something. Had them be a little older as characters instead of, like, high schoolers. Maybe they ran into him at a gas station or something, kind of the typical slasher thing, and maybe he stalked them all the way to their cabin, or their house, or whatever. You could have done something like that. You did not have to go the supernatural route, because that shit sucked. As great as the kills are in the film, the guitar killing and stuff with the drill on it, it's wacky, it's over the top, it's weird, but I loved it. That stuff is great. That actor being very Bruce Campbell-like, kind of even looking like Bruce Campbell, he's great. I love him in the film. But everything else is kind of a wasted joy. There's a pillow fight in this film that makes me never look at pillow fights the same because of how bizarre it was, and people just start going topless and shit. Why is that happening? It happened here. But again, the music is really good here. The kills, the practical effects, fantastic. When you see them pretty much always on screen, they look really good. And again, I like the characters. I think that the acting's pretty good for that. The choices for the actors and actresses, really solid. There's one guy in here who's supposed to be like a stupid Spicoli type. I think it's his name, from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I said that in my review as well. And he's hilarious. I love that guy. Really funny. But, you know, I liked it. I have parts of it that I like. But overall, it kind of it kind of falls flat, like really flat for me. I think the supernatural element was super damaging to it. I think that just a lot of choices, like the first hour of fucking nothing happening in an hour and 20-minute long movie is so stupid. That's such a bad idea. Compared to something like, at this time, you only had part 2 and part 1 back in the day. You know, comparing that to part 1, where from the get-go, From the get-go, we have the jokes, we have the type of humor that film is going for, we have the great kills, the great practical effects, the great music, the sleaziness to it. This film's a little sleazy too. But not as sleazy as part one in some ways, but in some ways kind of sleazier. Depends on what we're talking about and what part of the movies we're talking about. But part one, for me, in its entirety, is super enjoyable to watch. This one, not so much. I think it really gets a lot wrong. It could have been improved on one more rewrite. One more rewrite, this film could have been better, because of the puns being so great, the jokes being so great from this killer, the musical numbers, all of that being really good for me. It has a lot of good stuff in it, but it has a lot of shit in it, too. Anyway, moving along to my number 2 pick. My number 2 pick, personally, that I did not expect to like this film at all. I just reviewed it today, right before this video. That is Slumber Party Massacre, the remake, 2021 release from the Sci-Fi Channel. I hadn't heard much about this film. It didn't seem like it got massively super beloved reviews before I saw the movie, but then when I took out the time after I saw it and loved it as much as I did and was so surprised by how much I loved it, I went online to IMDb, I checked out a lot of my YouTubers I watch, like Sinister Cinema Reviews, some other people on YouTube as well, random people I'd never even heard of too, just to kind of see the general consensus on how was this film received by the public, and by especially Slumber Party Massacre fans, whether it be the old ones of all three, just the first two, just the first one, whoever. The film really had some good reception, and I'm surprised I didn't know about it more. I used to see this DVD copy of the 2021 remake in like Walmart and shit, and I never picked it up, just because I hadn't seen the films. I wanted to see them in order. That's kind of how I usually watch things. Except for like Godzilla, where there's like 30,000 movies. There's a lot of old ones I haven't seen of that yet. But I wanted to give this one a shot. I kept putting it off because of how bad part 2 and part 3 were. But I saw on Prime, and I didn't know if this was a deal or maybe what, but it sounded like a steal to me. You could rent it for like $2. And I rented it last night for $2, and I watched a little bit at work, and got really invested in it before I left work. Like on my lunch break, I started watching this last night. And when I got home, I was like, I'm finishing this movie, because I was really into it by that point. I watched the rest of it, and again, I was surprised. It's a very clever film. It's the kind of thing that I think would unfairly, as much as I support Comicsgate and a lot of things out there like that, as much as I hate the current political climate around everything, both sides, I'll tell you this, I feel like this film is one of those films that would get unfairly covered, even though I have not heard this. I want to be very clear, I have not heard anybody say this about this movie, but if you look in any place on the internet, I'm sure you could find some person saying this about this film. This is the kind of movie that would unfairly get put into the category of woke. It's absolutely not. It is very clever, it's very funny, and to have almost, not entirely, but almost an all-female cast being a full-on remake of the original film with some new ideas, some new things, some new references to old classic horror things that I think was done very well. The pacing being a little off because it kind of jumps around. It starts in 1993, then we have a present-day story, then we kind of have a twist that turns us into a little bit of a different movie. The film feels like it's over an hour into the hour and 20-minute runtime, which, by the way, it kept it short, so that's great too. But that last 20 minutes of this remake are a little wild too, as an old throwback to another classic horror film. I really appreciated this. I think as kind of an all-female thing, with the director being as good as she was. She's fantastic, probably the best directing of the series entirely at this current moment. The budget, making it feel like a 1980s film, and the shots and everything else, making the music like that, that was really good. The writing from the chick who wrote the screenplay for Leprechaun Returns, which I haven't seen yet, as much of a Leprechaun fan as I am. I'm just immensely surprised and shocked that I loved this as much as I did. I did not expect to sit here and give you a positive review on my last video for this movie, and I said that in that video. I thought it was so surprisingly good. Someone like myself who's more interested in the writing, I thought it was so well done. I thought a lot of it was very clever, the kind of jokes on gender stereotypes, which I don't give a shit about, but I thought they did a really good job with that here. For like the first time ever, I've seen a film handle that well, in a really well-written way, in a really funny way, or just a fun way in general. The cast and crew, all of the actors and actresses, I think they mostly did a great job. There might be a line here or there that's a little clumsy, or it's not the best take they had to put in the film for whatever reason. There are moments like that. But for the most part, I like the main group of girls. I like the little sister character who I was worried about being kind of an annoying, like brother or sister kid from like a Goosebumps show. I was worried about all of that, But I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought the kind of beginning of the film with the mom in the movie, what she was going through, barely escaping, having her daughter. Now her daughter and her friends are going out to the cabin too. Their motives for that I will not spoil for you. They say it's a girls' weekend. It's really kind of not. I loved all of that. I thought all of that stuff was very clever, very well done. There's so much stuff in here. For an hour and 20 minutes, there's so much in this film. And it's so clever for that runtime that I really don't know how to explain it. That I almost feel like Slumber Party Massacre doesn't deserve what this movie is. Really, I believe that. But I would also say, if Slumber Party Massacre had never existed, and if it was made for the first time now, in 2023, or 2021 in this case, for this movie, this is what it would have been like. Because the original Slumber Party Massacre, was kind of a parody of slashers at that time, which we hadn't had too many. You know, it was a big boom in the 1981 and 82 era. But it wanted to parody a lot of that stuff, a lot of the tropes and everything. And I think the original film does a great job with that back in the day. I think this film is very much like that for nowadays. And not in a bad, like, again, political climate type of way. This is well done. This is genuinely fun. My biggest complaint that I had in my review was that, oh, I'm so hungry. Do you hear that? I hope you can't hear my stomach growling, dude. I need to eat some breakfast in a little bit. I don't like to record with a full stomach. I like to just kind of do it and get it over with, and then later on before work, get something to eat. Anyway, my biggest gripe and complaint about this film, I think everything is well handled pretty much, aside from some writing here and there. My biggest complaint personally is the kills. The kills are typically practical effects when you get to see them. You don't get to see all of them, though. Some of them that I really want to see, you don't get to. And I would say out of the ones that you do get to see, maybe one or two are kind of shitty. There's one in particular where there's like a drill bit getting put into somebody's neck, and it turns into like a green screen shot, and it's very obviously green screen, and it looks like shit. It looks so fucking bad. I hate that kill. But then there are ones, like one in particular later on in the film, involving a guitar string getting caught up in the drill that the killer uses. Russ Thorne, by the way, is the killer in this movie. And Russ Thorne's new actor, phenomenal. I loved him. His performance is very silly. I'll get to that in a moment. Probably my favorite of the entire film because it's so over the top. But that kill that I love so much, it's my favorite of the film, involves a guitar string getting caught in the drill and spinning around like a helicopter, basically. That shit and the outcome of that is truly awesome. I loved it. I thought it was horrific. And the aftermath, the practical effects for that, excellent. Absolutely excellent, dude. Russ Thorne. He is very much like the original Russ Thorne in a lot of ways. He has a better head of hair, not balding, but he wears like a jean jacket. I think that Russ Thorne wore that a little bit in the original film. I've only seen it one time, and that was like 3 weeks ago, so forgive me if I don't get all the details down perfectly, but I remember Russ Thorne wearing a jean jacket at some point. Maybe in the locker room kill scene, I believe. Anyway, this Russ Thorne pretty much wears his jean jacket all the time. And apparently girls in this area, again, we started in 1993, then we kind of go to present day. Apparently every year there's a girl going missing, and over that time there's been about 20 girls that have gone missing at some point, never to be found, basically. So we assume Russ Thorne has been doing that in the meantime. We don't really know where he's been or how he's been doing this stuff, but he has been somehow. In this film he uses his drill that we love from the original film and from Part 3. Of course he's not in Part 3, but still. He uses the massive weapon staple drill to kill people, but he also does this thing. Now, of course, in the original film, he talks at the end of the movie, and he tells people, like, I love you, and that's why he's killing people, because he's such a fucking psycho, he's killing them because he loves them. Maybe, maybe not, but that's what he's supposed to be doing. And he does that here, and I really love that about him. When he's in the film, he does that. My personal favorite thing that this actor chose to do, it sounds like he chose to do this, from what I would say. This feels like an actor thing, like Heath Ledger licking his lips all the time in Dark Knight. That feels like an actor thing, just like this does. When he is ever in front of somebody, he turns his head to look at you. Like, he won't look at you like I look at you in this recording. He will, like, have his head and have his eyes watching you all the way over here. And then he'll, like, get bored and he'll be like, and he'll turn his head like that. It's great. It makes me laugh every fucking time he does it. But he does this no matter what he's doing. If he's just watching you or if he's going to kill you, he's going to look at you like that, like a shark, dude. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's this very sharky thing. I don't know. Maybe they tried to bring out that animalistic nature of Russ Thorn in that way. Very clever, once again, very smart. But it's supposed to be funny, and I think it is. It makes me laugh, and it made me laugh a lot last night while I was watching this in bed. And one of my favorite things about it is when he runs after people to go drill them with his big old drill. The running is absolutely hilarious, dude. Can I also say, too, I forgot to say in my review for this movie, they even recreate one of the posters for these movies. Kind of all of the posters, they all kind of have the same thing of somebody's legs, the drill kind of being grossly symbolic of something else, and then girls, you know, between the legs, like just chilling there, screaming, whatever. On pretty much every poster for Slumber Party Massacre movies, you have that as the cover of those films. This one doesn't have a poster of that, as you could tell from the thumbnail of my video for it. But they represent that in the film, and I think it's really funny how they do that. But anyway, very clever film. I think this remake is so much better than so many horror remakes we've seen out there. I recently reviewed My Bloody Valentine, which a friend of mine, Franchise Horror Reviews, who I talk about a lot recently, he loves that film. It's one of his favorite modern-day slashers and remakes ever made. It's one of his favorite guilty pleasures of all time. And I used to feel that way about that movie. I don't anymore. Personally, when I rewatched it recently, there's a few things I love, like Jensen Ackles and Tom Atkins. There's some gore that can be good. There's some funny moments in it, some funny lines that are good. The coal miner outfit looks great in that film. But a lot of it, to me, falls flat. A lot of things kind of really hold that film back in my personal taste. But if I had to be honest with you, I think I like the Slumber Party Massacre remake more than I like the My Bloody Valentine remake. That might sound like some fucking heresy for some of you. But if you haven't seen this, I really think you're missing out. If you love the original film, if you love all three of the films, there are references to Part 2, and I think 1 to Part 3. I could be wrong. In this movie. But I loved all of that. I thought this movie had so much going for it. It was so fun. Again, it was clever. I didn't expect it to be as clever as it was. I was worried going into it. I was worried with the modern day kind of setting of everything politically. I was worried about what I was going to get into with this. I figured it'd be a total piece of shit. The IMDb rating is like a 5 out of 10. That's so ridiculous to me. I think it's very much, at least a little bit higher than that, for me personally. I gave it a 3 out of 5 when I reviewed it, but again, I said in my review, it leans more towards a 4 for me. It is a 3. I don't think it quite gets to a 4 like Part 1 does, but I love it. I think it's got a lot of stuff in it to really appreciate and really admire. I just wish we had more kills on screen and less CGI kills. I know the budget restraints are there, safety measures are there, I get all that. But you can't tell me that didn't drag this film a little bit for you. As a big slasher fan, as a big gory fan, you can't tell me that didn't ruin that a little bit for you and bring it down to about a 3. But again, I still think it's above average because it's very well done for what it is. Again, the directing and all that, super stellar. Super stellar. Moving along, though, to my number 1 pick. I think it's very obvious what that is, and I don't see how anybody could really disagree with this. I've had some people tell me Part 2 is better than this. I don't agree with you at all. I'm sorry, that's just the case for me. My number 1 pick is the original 1982 film. I love it. It's so good. It's not perfect. I love the sleaziness to it. I love the main cast of girls. Probably my favorite out of the entire series. Part 2 has a good cast too, like I said. But this might be my favorite cast because they're actually given good characters, good writing. Again, this was conceived as a parody. It was kind of shot as a straightforward thriller or slasher, whatever. Everything from the Russ Thorn casting and how funny and fun he is, to that scene where he's counting the bodies in his trunk. I love all of that too. To then moving along to like the actors and actresses and just their banter amongst each other as a group of friends. I love all that too. The new girl moving into town, she's really pretty, good actress too. She has the younger sister she's babysitting one night when her parents are gone or whatever. I like that story as kind of a subplot that was kind of fun. But the main story with the Slumber Party Massacre stuff and the massacre himself, that stuff is fantastic. The practical effects are phenomenal in this movie. They are the best in my personal opinion. Part 2 has some that are better, but I can't decide which one I like more. I think it's Part 1's, because everything surrounding the kills are much, much better. It improves the kills for me. But things like the pizza guy scene are really cool. I really love this. I think it has a lot going for it. The music is fantastic. That 80s atmosphere is dripping, absolutely dripping off of this movie. It came out the year after Friday the 13th Part 2, My Bloody Valentine in 1981. Of course, Halloween in 78, Halloween 2 in 81. I think Halloween 3 came out the year after this, I believe. I don't think it was 82. It was 83, right? I think. I could be wrong. But anyway, I think they got so much right with this movie. I love it. And I can't believe that it took me so long to get around to seeing it. It never came on TV like Halloween and Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street and Chucky and all these other franchises, even down to fucking Leprechaun. I like this more than I like Leprechaun, just so you know, this particular movie. I don't know how the fuck people could never play this on TV. Yeah, it's got a little bit more you have to edit out, probably. But you could still pull that off. You could still make that work, I think. You could probably trim this down to an hour-long film, honestly, and make it work. Make it an hour and a half in total on TV with all the ads and commercials and shit. But who watches TV anymore? Point is, I never saw the film until recently, and I was very surprised by how much I enjoyed it, how much I loved Russ Thorne as a killer. The ending scene of this film involving him and kind of the things that happened to him really fucking horrified me. Because when I was a kid, I had that ending spoiled for me, I believe. Or in the last few years, I've had that ending spoiled for me. At some point, I've had this spoiled for me, maybe twice in my life, I don't know. But the ending is horrific, in my opinion. Really got to me. It's a very effective movie. Again, the kills are very cool, very effective, very beautiful looking with the practical effects and stuff. But it has flaws, but I still think it's the best. I think it's easily the best. I gave it a 4 out of 5, like I said in my last ranking part of this. My ranking for the remake. I said I gave it a 4 out of 5, and I stick with that. It's a really good flick. It's almost at a 5 for me, because of how fun it is to watch. That's really the thing I go into slasher movies for. Personally, I don't find many slashers scary. If they have really great characters, I'm engaged. I'm into that. If they have really great kills, like Halloween Kills did, even if the characters weren't amazing in that. Halloween Kills was fun to watch because of the killing, because of Michael and what they did there. Some movies can have one or the other. I think this film has both, in my personal opinion. That's a great thing. That's a great thing. Slashers can be one or the other for me. As long as I'm into it, as long as I'm having a good time, I really don't give a shit. I like seeing the kills. If I can't have that, though, give me some laughs, give me some good characters I give a shit about, or give me some scares. Not many can deliver the scares. But, with that being said, that is my ranking of this series. If you haven't seen Part 1 of the remake, I highly recommend them. If you're a completionist and you have to watch Part 2 and 3, be ready. You might like Part 2 more than I did. Part 3, I think, is just objectively horrible. I'm serious. Part 2 is kind of boring until the ending, the last 20 minutes or so, like I said. But overall, like I said, as a recap, it's Part 3, Part 2, remake from 2021, and then the original for me. I love the original. I think it's fantastic. Not perfect by any means, like I said, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close knowing it's kind of a parody in nature. Even of slashers at that time with the tropes and stuff, it really knows what it wants to be, and it pulls that off for the most part, in my opinion. But anyway, guys, what are your rankings for the Slumber Party Massacre series? I would love to see all that down in the comment section down below. What do you think about it? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know all that, too. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope I wasn't too terribly hot-takey and giving you too many offensive picks and stuff on what I think is the best and worst and everything. And I hope you'll give these movies a shot. At least, mainly, my recommendations are for the original and for the remake from 2021. Both are really, really good in a lot of ways. Not perfect, either of them, but really good for what they are, I want to say. Especially the original. Anyway, have you seen them? What do you think? Put your thoughts and comments down below again. Thank you for watching, guys. God bless you all, and goodbye.